Hello and welcome everyone. A very warm good evening. My name is Harshmeet Singh and I welcome you all to today's session at Narayana IAS Academy. As you know, every single day at 4 p.m. we analyze the most important news stories of the day from the Hindu newspaper and the Indian Express newspaper. We take out news articles from both the mains and the prelims examination point of view, along with giving you some practice questions so that you can test your knowledge here while being with us. Before we begin analyzing today's Hindu newspaper, a quick reminder: if you are looking to prepare for the UPSC Civil Service examination and are planning to attempt the exam in 2026 or later on, we have a couple of courses on offer for you. There is a 1 year and a 2 year course specifically designed to make sure that all the stages of the examinations are covered, from the prelims to the mains till the stage of the interview. If you require any other details about this program, feel free to check out the description of this class. You'll find a link for our website where you will get all the information about the courses on offer. If you still have any other question about any of the courses, feel free to ask those in the comment section and we'll be happy to respond to you then and there itself. Now let's see what are the topics that we have taken up for today's discussion. These are the topics that we have taken from the Hindu newspaper today. The first one is about the problem of waste management in India and how the Supreme Court now is trying to intervene. The Supreme Court has said enough is enough. We don't see the government doing enough on this front. So maybe it is time for us to intervene in this matter. Then the second article is about India's forest cover, how it is far below our target and we need to do much more, the importance of forest cover. Third article is about Starlink's entry into India. As you know, Starlink is an internet providing services that provides internet through satellites. It is a product of SpaceX owned by Elon Musk. We'll be discussing in this article the challenges that India is facing. Why is it that we have some kind of an issue in allowing Starlink's operation in India? The next article is about how monsoon has an impact on the fisheries in Bay of Bengal. The impact of monsoon, if the monsoon is excessive or if it's deficient, how does it impact the fish catching activity? And the last article is about how America has again put India on its watch list, where they think that India's intellectual property rights, that is the IPR regime, is not up to the mark, that Indian government has not been able to give IPR or protection to IPRs as much as their countries want. These are the articles that we have for you today. Let's begin then with the first article. The first article that we have here is important from the mains examination point of view. And as I said, it is mainly on the issue of waste management. Now, waste management is a huge problem for India because of various reasons. The first obvious reason is the huge population that we have. As the population increases, especially when a population starts to consume more, when you have more people earning better as compared to earlier, you consume more things, you end up wasting more things. The waste produced in the households is increasing day by day, especially as more and more people are shifting from rural to the urban areas. There has been an uptick in the waste production. Now, when such huge amounts of waste is produced, the problem is, how do you manage that? You would have seen a lot of cities struggling with it. The biggest example is Delhi itself, where the idea earlier was that whatever waste is produced, we will try and fill it up under the land. But now it has become so excessive that there are mountains of garbage on the outskirts of Delhi. They are extremely dangerous for the environment. There have even been cases when people have died because a part of it has fallen on the people passing nearby. Now, there are a lot of things that can be done here and a lot of techniques that many countries apply. For example, one thing that Indian government has been trying to push the citizens to do is waste segregation or waste segregation at source. You would have seen this, that it is advised that whenever, for example, let's say you are discarding your household waste for the municipality or for the other authorities to come and pick it up, it is advised that you should separate the wet waste from dry waste, because segregation at the source means segregation at a place where you are producing the waste is the easiest thing. If you mix up all kind of waste and then you give it away, it is almost impossible for them to segregate. Why is it important for anyone to segregate the waste? Because there are different methods to process dry waste as compared to wet waste. When you mix them up, you reduce any probability or take away any probability of processing or recycling this waste, and that becomes a big problem. Then there is no solution to this. And this is why, despite multiple policies, nothing like this has been done. There are certain cities where waste segregation is taken very seriously, but in most cities in India and most households, waste segregation is not something that we focus a lot on. And this is why the Supreme Court has now come in and they have said that it is time for us to take the matters into our hands. Before we go into details of this article, I also wanted to show you the kind of questions that you can expect from this part. This was a question asked in the mains examination in 2018. The question, as you can see, what are the impediments in disposing huge quantities of discarded solid waste which are continuously being generated? How do we move safely the toxic waste that have been accumulating in our habitat, in our habitable environment? So almost exactly the same question has been asked, which is discussed in this particular article today. Now, as I said, the problem is with increasing population in India and a lot more people now moving from rural to the urban life, the amount of waste that is generated is only bound to increase. As people become more consumeristic, means as you consume more things, you waste more stuff, you would have noticed you discard a lot of things much more, or you discard things in much larger quantity nowadays as compared to what you used to do earlier. A part of it may be because you're consuming much more, a part of it may be because you don't value what you have right now. Now, we do have certain laws in place. For example, we do have what we call as a solid waste management rules of 2016. Despite having such kind of rules, we have not seen the implementation improving one bit. The Supreme Court has underlined the importance of waste management and clean environment multiple times. So much so that as per the Supreme Court, it is a part of Article 21, means having clean environment, having clean surroundings is a part of your right to life. It is so important. The government cannot and should not ignore it, but that has not been the case on the ground, and we have seen multiple cases. This is what the Supreme Court has said. First, Supreme Court has given an order for compliance on mandamus. The court has given orders to mainly municipal authorities and state authorities that are responsible for managing this waste. You would have all read in Indian polity, when you read about Supreme Court, there are different types of writs that are issued by the Supreme Court and the High Court. One of those 5 types of writs issued is called mandamus. Mandamus gets translated into we command. When the Supreme Court commands a state authority, commands a government authority to do the work that they are supposed to do the work for which they are getting paid. That is what mandamus is about. So they issued a mandamus for municipalities and the state governments that you are not doing your job properly, you are supposed to do better, you have to ensure waste segregation, you have to ensure collection, disposal as per the protocols. They also reminded them about the fact that this is a compulsion because it is under right to life, that is under Article 21, it is a fundamental right of the people to live in a clean and healthy environment. And if you are not doing that, you are essentially violating the fundamental rights of the people. They also said that we will establish an oversight committee to make sure that whatever work is done, especially for waste segregation, that should be overlooked by a committee that looks into whether or not the protocols that have been established are being followed or not. All this is what the Supreme Court is trying to do. Apart from this, if you look at how waste management usually happens in India, as I said, there are a lot of implementation challenges. It is not the first time that the Supreme Court or the governments are worrying about waste management. India has not had this problem emerge all of a sudden. It's an old problem and we have seen this grow for many decades. The problem has been that despite the Supreme Court giving these kind of judgments, it is very difficult to implement it. For example, when they tell the municipality that you have to ensure waste management or waste segregation, the response of municipality usually is, we don't have enough staff. And the staff that we have is not working properly. Why? Because they are not being paid salaries on time. It's a very common issue. You will see this across the country, municipalities protesting, saying that we have not been giving or we have not been paid proper salaries on time, so we will not work and we will not adhere to all these rules and regulations. That is a big issue that we have. The Supreme Court has asked for immediate redressal. They have asked for raising more public awareness, because see, you can't always blame the municipality or the state governments for this. Waste segregation is an integral part of public waste management. And if we as public do not segregate waste, if we as public do not separate dry and wet waste at the source, it becomes almost impossible for then this waste to be managed later on. And this is a huge problem. So the blame has to be given to the public as well. There has to be much more awareness, education about this. And on the other hand, we have to work on increasing the capability and the capacity of the municipalities and the other authorities that are working at this level. So both of these have to be looked into. How do other countries do it? Now, you can take example of some other countries in Europe, but please do keep in mind, it's not fair to compare India with a country, let's say like Sweden or Netherlands. The reason being that waste production is in direct proportion of population that you have. It's a direct function of your population. It is very obvious that the larger the population you have, the more will be the waste that will be generated. So in countries such as Sweden and Netherlands, since the population is much lower, there is no doubt about the fact that the people are more educated and they understand the policies and they follow the policies in a much better manner than India. But you can't ignore the fact that it is the huge difference in population that makes a lot of difference. So while Sweden, Netherlands, etc., they have been able to manage this problem, they have been able to ensure segregation, recycling of most of the waste. There are strict policies for their implementation. In India, that is lagging somehow. And this is where we need to improve and we need to work better. But as I said, the improvement doesn't only have to come from the side of the government or municipality, it has to come from the side of the citizens as well. We have been talking about how Article 21 has already given clean environment the status of one of the parts of right to life. It is recognized under Article number 21. Even in directive principles, the government has been given the responsibility to have clean environment, to ensure that they do their bit and make sure that there's clean environment available. On the other hand, Article number 51A that talks about fundamental duties puts the onus on the citizens as well. So it's a combined effort that has to come together. There are multiple Supreme Court cases where this matter has come up time and time again. There is a famous Vellore Citizens Welfare Forum case in which the Supreme Court introduced a polluter pays principle. Means whichever company, whichever organization pollutes the environment, they are the ones who should pay for it. They are the ones who should pay for cleaning it up or for segregation. For example, you would see a lot of rivers in India being polluted, almost being brown in color. It is also because of a lot of industrial waste that is being sent into these rivers. So whoever pollutes, they are the ones they are supposed to pay. There is also data from Central Pollution Control Board that says that India generates 1,60,000 tons of solid waste daily, out of which more than 50% is unprocessed. More than 50% of it is not being processed, it is not being recycled in any way whatsoever, which is a huge problem, and this is just going to increase further as more and more people adopt an urban way of life, and this thus is a big problem going ahead. The next article that we have here is about the issue of tree cover in India. Now, no one here is unaware of the importance of trees. No one here is unaware about the importance of forests that we have in our life, not just in the environment, but in our day-to-day life, economic point of view. All of these benefits are directly or indirectly related to trees or forest. Having said that, India's tree cover, forest cover rather, is much below what we actually have envisaged in our policy. For example, National Forest Policy of 1988 envisaged that India's forest cover should be 33%. That is the aim. And where are we right now? 25.17%. So we are much below the target. And that is a huge problem that we are facing, especially at a time where a country like India wants to project itself as a leader of the developing world, We want to project ourselves as a responsible country working towards sustainable development. With all that in mind, we have to work harder to achieve that goal. This is a kind of practice question that you can expect from this part. It was asked in 2019. Whatever previous year questions we show you here, I expect that you will tell me the answers to these questions in the chat, in the comment section, so that you can see how many of you got it right or not. Now, the context of this article is simple. It's a very basic, straightforward article about importance of forest cover, importance of trees, and why is it that we are still lagging? Why is it that there are problems and we are not able to achieve that 33% target of forest cover that we had envisaged so many years ago? As I said, the current status, India's forest and tree cover is for 25.17%, well below the target of our policy of 33%. Now that policy itself was in 1988. Now imagine, 37 years have passed and we have still not been able to get to that target of the policy. And the reasons are very simple. Increasing population pressure means you have to build more houses, more housing facility for an increasing population. You have to clear more area for building of factories, for building of infrastructure. All of that leads to deforestation. So urbanization, deforestation, all of this goes hand in hand. No wonder that the average temperature that we are facing is increasing. No wonder that many more people are dying of heat waves and heat strokes as compared to what used to be the case earlier. All this is directly related to the forest cover that we have. Now, nowadays you will see in metro cities especially there is vertical development that is taking place. Vertical development means huge structures being built, 20 floor, 30 floor, 40 floor structures where apartment style living has come in. Earlier, since we did not plan for a huge population, most of the development in our metro cities also was only horizontal, not vertical, where there was only one floor. So the amount of area left for the forest or for the trees specifically was very, very, very minimal. And that was a big problem, because of which we are still facing issues with an increasing population. Now, no one here has to be reminded about the importance of trees. All of you know all these important factors that the trees bring in. Afforestation, they prevent soil erosion, they also make sure productivity of soil improves, they also make sure that there are many more livelihood opportunities given to people who are related to it. Because of all of this, we need to work harder. Again, the point here is not about are trees important or not. Everyone knows trees are important. But the point is that even with all of that, we are still not working hard enough. There was a very interesting line that I read a few years back, where it said that only if the trees provided free Wi-Fi, no one would cut them. We cut them because they only give us oxygen, and who needs that? That is the significance of trees, that they give us something so much more important than any other resource. What they give us is the basis of human life, and even then we are not able to give them the kind of importance. There are many initiatives the government has started. The government launched something called the Green India Mission, which is now a part of National Action Plan on Climate Change. This has been able to improve the forest cover, but very, very mildly. So it has been able to increase the forest cover by 0.56%. We also have National Agroforestry Policy, where trees outside in India, for example, are also taken into consideration. They are also counted. There are community-based afforestation, where the entire communities have been given this responsibility that you have to look into, or you have to look up, and you have to look into how to increase the forest cover. You have to be given the responsibility. The government also tells them that minor forest produce you can have, so it can help you economically as well. Timber, etc. you can't cut. So government is trying to include community in this, because these kind of initiatives like afforestation, etc. can only be successful when the community, the people who are living nearby, are also in support of this idea, and they are playing their role. Apart from this, there also is a need to have participation from the private sector, and it has happened. For example, under the CSR, that is the Corporate Social Responsibility laws, under which companies of a certain size and bigger than that have to spend at least 2% of their profit on social activities, including afforestation. So a lot of companies do this, they plant a lot of trees so that they can earn carbon credit and they can have some incentive from the government. You also would have heard in the news that EU has something called carbon tax, or what they call as carbon border adjustment mechanism that they had started. The idea is that EU says that if you are importing something, let's say from India, and to manufacture that product, you polluted the environment, then we will put a tax on you. That is called the carbon tax, or CBAM, whatever you want to call it. And in order for the companies to avoid this, if the companies don't want to pay that tax, they have to show EU that they have been planting a lot of trees, they have been ensuring carbon sequestration. If they show this, that they are offsetting their emissions, if they show to EU that whatever emission, whatever pollution they are making, they are also planting trees to neutralize that, then the tax will not be applicable to them. So all this is being done by the private sector as well. But again, the speed at which the private sector is doing all these or taking all these initiatives has not really been up to the mark. The government also is trying to make the farmers aware about the economic potential that it has, about how they can earn more money with what you call as agroforestry. As per the government, the agroforestry has a potential to boost farmers' income by 20 to 30%. A lot more people, for example, are interested in buying plants for their house, so nursery management, forest conservation, all of these activities can improve farmers' income as well. It will bring benefits of increased tree cover, forest cover as well, and it will also improve the farmers' income at the same time. So all these initiatives are important and the government wants to focus on this. Here are certain recommendations that the article also talks about. First, India can have a national carbon credit registry. For example, we can have a public record of who is planting more trees, who is it that is doing the best work in carbon sequestration, who is it that is responsible for a lot of carbon emissions being offset. There have to be clear regulatory framework under Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement, as you know, in 2015, under which the countries decided their own goals called NDCs, nationally determined contributions, where the countries agreed to cut down emissions, focus on renewable energy. So we need to have a proper framework for that as well. You also have to incentivize the private sector, make sure that they feel it is worth their time and effort to plant more trees. They should make sure that the private sector is much more involved in these kind of activities, because with their money, their involvement, the government can achieve much more. There are some existing schemes that work in this regard already. We have the Campa funds, as all of you would have read about. Campa fund is a special fund, for example, where let's say a private sector company wants to clear a forest land. They want to set up a factory. So if they cut down the forest area, they have to compensate for that. They have to deposit a certain amount of money in a fund, where that money will be used by the government for afforestation activities. That is called the Campa fund. However, as per the news reports, a lot of money in the Campa fund is not being utilized. A lot of money is just kept there idle. Then the state governments also have their own action plan for their own states, specifically because all the states have a different situation. The government has also been working on eco-sensitive zones, which are buffer areas around the protected forest, so that there is minimal human interaction with the forest, so that the chances of them being cut down, the chance of deforestation are reduced. All these policies still exist. However, they have not been able to give the kind of result that we had hoped for. Internationally also, India was at the forefront in the Paris climate deal to present our own goals, which are called the NDCs, National Determined Contributions, where the government of India had promised that we will create an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of CO2 equivalent via forest and tree cover. We have not been able to achieve this so far because our tree cover is not increasing at a speed at which we had thought. Hopefully, we will be able to do better. This is what internationally we have been doing, and we should do better as per this article moving forward. The next article that we have here is about Starlink. Starlink initiative, or it's a kind of a product offered by SpaceX. SpaceX is a private space agency that is owned by Elon Musk. They provide Starlink. Starlink is an internet service provider using satellites. So they have sent a lot of thousands of satellites around the world, and using those satellite signals, they will be giving internet. That is the idea of Starlink. Usually right now, the internet that you have at your home, the broadband that we have, it is all on the basis of towers that we have. So Jio, Airtel, all of them have to set up these huge towers in order for the signals to be propagated. And that is why a large part of the country, especially in rural areas, still do not have broadband connectivity. This is where this comes in as an alternative. In many countries, they have already started offering their satellite-based internet. This is a kind of question from space-related issues that you can expect. 2015, this question was asked. Space is anyways one of the most favorite topics for UPSC to ask questions. Now, what is the status of Starlink right now? The issue is Starlink wants to come to India. They have not been allowed so far. Government is still thinking of it. Starlink has already signed contracts with Airtel, Jio in order to provide services to Indian consumers. However, the government still has some concerns about that. See, internet is such an integral part of our lives now that if our internet is controlled by a foreign entity, that to a foreign private company, it will have a lot of issues. It might have some issues going forward. For example, our internet connectivity will be in their hands. If they just want, they can cut it off. For example, Starlink became very famous during the Russia-Ukraine war. When the Russia-Ukraine war first started, the first thing that Russia had done was they had attacked on the communication towers of Ukraine so that the internet goes off. So Starlink started providing Ukrainians the internet facility. They had their satellites already. They told the Ukrainians that you can use our satellites. When entire Ukraine almost was using Starlink internet, all of a sudden they started demanding money. That is, Starlink started demanding money. And when Ukraine said we don't have money, they switched off their internet for some time. That proves the power that is in these hands, the hands of these private internet companies now. This is something the government of India does not want. Secondly, the satellites that they have sent to space, they've already sent thousands of satellites. All of them are in the low Earth orbit. So when you have so many satellites in the low Earth orbit, there is always a chance of collision, there is always a chance of some destruction. It is not like your roads where there is a red light or there are rules that have to be followed. There are no red lights up there in the space. So there is always a chance of collision. That becomes a problem. This is where the government has to take a decision and choose between connectivity and sovereignty. Yes, it will provide connectivity, especially to those who live in areas where there is no fiber optic connectivity. The government has not been able to pull those wires or set up or establish big towers. It does offer connectivity, for example, in far off areas, rural areas, hilly terrain, etc. You would notice when you go to many far off secluded places, you would not get internet connectivity. That problem will be resolved with this kind of internet connection, that is the one that is provided through the satellites. But again, as I said, because it is being controlled by a foreign private entity, that has a big question mark over our sovereignty. No government would want to give away data of individuals to someone else. And since internet is such an integral part right now, everything that you do, you are watching this class because of internet. You do your banking facilities because of internet. Anything that you buy on any of the apps is due to internet. The Google Maps that you're using is because of internet. Every single thing that you do surrounding your life is somehow based on internet. And when that is given in the hands of a private operator, that becomes a big challenge for the government. Now you might say that even in India, when Jio or Airtel, they are providing internet, they are also private companies. Yes, but the difference is that's a foreign private company and they are not bound by Indian laws in many cases. That is something the government would not really want. Now, if you look at the geopolitics of it, again, this is considered as another American way to have control over the world's data. For example, let's look at the GPS that you use. GPS on the basis of which the Google map works. GPS was an invention of the US military. They invented it for themselves and the world started to use it. Similarly, this kind of a technology started with US and they want to control the entire world's data. But as expected, other countries are now jumping in and they are competing. For example, look at China. China has made their own satellite constellation for internet providing, that is Guowan. India, on the other hand, Indian companies have decided to collaborate with Starlink rather than working on their own network. Airtel, Jio, the two biggest broadband providers in India, have already partnered with Starlink. The idea is that they will be rolling out the services in India with the help of Starlink. Now, it's not that other countries are not doing this. Other companies in other parts of the world have started to do this, but because SpaceX started this much earlier, they have an advantage over the others. They have already sent over 7,000 satellites. Please imagine, 7,000 satellites is much more than any other space agency, including NASA, ISRO, whatever big countries you think of. You combine all of the satellites that they have sent, and even then the number will not reach 7,000. That is the scale of operation where they have been working. So over 7,000 satellites have already been sent. There are other companies who are competing. Amazon has Project Kuiper. That is a similar kind of a project. There is OneWeb, similar kind of a project. But again, they are far, far, far behind where SpaceX or Starlink right now. So they have the first mover advantage. And because it is run by Elon Musk, who you know right now is very close to the American president, that adds one more dimension to this entire story. That Elon Musk controls it, who many people are saying has a very, very big say in how the US government is running right now. That is why it is creating even more complications. That is why India is taking its own time thinking about whether we should allow it or not. There are always chances of surveillance and data. India for a long time has been demanding data localization. For the longest time, we have been asking these internet companies that the data of Indians like Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, etc., Twitter, we have been demanding that data of Indians should be stored in India and not outside. But all their data centers are outside India and they have not been listening to us. Now that you involve an internet service provider to this equation, where they would know what are you browsing, what is the data you're entering, they would have a track of all of that. And when that goes into the hands of a private foreign entity, it becomes even more challenging. So it is a part of critical national infrastructure, not just our private working, even with the government. Every important infrastructure of the government right now is dependent on internet somehow. So the chances of hacking, the chances of something going wrong, the chances of them taking over control from you, all of that increases when a foreign private entity comes in. And that's why the government has to decide whether they want to offer these services or not. Now, one other aspect of it is not going to be cheap. In the countries where they are providing this service, it is not cheap. It is expensive than the other services that are being provided in that country. So it's not that if it starts in India, everyone will adopt it. Many people might not adopt it. Many people might say that, no, this is not something that works for me. So don't think that this will be the only internet service provider anyways, but when it comes, it might be a challenge for the security of the country. Apart from that, as I said, the government, if they do offer this, they have to work on the pricing part of it. They also have to work on public-private co-financing models, because if you are adopting this kind of a technology, especially for those areas where people don't have internet right now, means rural areas, you have to make it even cheaper. If, for example, you're living in a city and you have a broadband connection of 1,200, 1,500 rupees a month, Starlink offers something even more expensive, how can you expect someone in the rural areas to be able to afford this? So it will be successful in India only when the pricing is very competitive, especially in the rural areas. And for this, the government has to be in partnership with the private sector and see how can they make it affordable to solve the real connectivity problem that we are facing. The other part of the problem, as I discussed, is kind of a traffic jam situation in the space, because there are so many of these satellites that have been sent by SpaceX, etc. Over 7,000 satellites means traffic jam in the space. There's always a chance of space orbital debris, means when there's a collision or even when the satellites have run out of their life, they just freely exist in the space, and there's always a chance of them destroying something else. Lack of proper regulations, no proper binding law for the countries. How many satellites can you send? Where can you send a satellite? There's no binding law for that the countries follow. And that creates a bit of a hodgepodge situation in the space. And this is where the countries, especially like India, have to be more careful. The next article that we have here is based on a report that talks about the relationship between monsoon and the fishing activities in Bay of Bengal. Let's take a simple idea. The simple idea here is, When the monsoon is more than expected, then the rivers have more water enters Bay of Bengal, it brings more nutrients, which brings more fish, which means that there is better fishing output for the fishermen. So this is one aspect of it. That is, that because of more monsoon, more water, more nutrients, more fish, so it is better for their fish catching. Second aspect of it, when there is too much water coming in, it also negatively impacts the phytoplanktons. When it negatively impacts the phytoplanktons, then there is a problem of fish not being available in large quantity. So that is a negative aspect as well. So basically this study has found out that whenever we have any variation in the monsoon, either we have a deficient monsoon, means lower than average, or we have excessive monsoon, higher than average. In both these cases, there is a major variation in the amount of fish output or fishing output that we have. If you see this kind of a question that has been asked earlier, in 2017 there was a question on Indian Ocean Dipole, IOD. Now this study is the basis of this particular article. Let's see what the study actually tells us. So the key finding of the study is, number one, as I said, there is a direct relationship between monsoon variability and marine productivity in Bay of Bengal especially. When there is increased monsoon, there is higher river runoff, more nutrients, beneficial. Also there is more turbidity, meaning there is more turbulence, the water flows, etc. changes. It reduces sunlight availability for phytoplanktons, photosynthesis. So it works in both ways. Something that is harmful for the fishermen, something that works as a benefit for the fishermen. And it is all based on a data that has been taken over 20 years. So it's not just 1 or 2 years. Over 20 years of data has been taken to understand this. The output was the study is that primary productivity is fluctuating significantly with interannual variations in monsoon intensity. So as the monsoon intensity changes, when it is lower than average or higher than average, it has a direct connection on the marine productivity in Bay of Bengal. And the interesting part is, Bay of Bengal is one of the most productive areas for fishing in the world. If you look at the world average, for example, in terms of the area, for example, Bay of Bengal has around 2% of the world's ocean water. In comparison, the amount of fish or the marine productivity that they offer is about 8% of the world. So 8% of marine resources are found in Bay of Bengal, although they have just around 2% of the world's water area. That tells us how important and how productive this area has always been for the fishermen, and how monsoon has a major impact. Now, the problem with this is, as global warming is increasing, the erratic nature of monsoon will only increase. Erratic nature means both. It may go up, it may go down. We have seen for many years now, there are places where there are floods because of excessive rains, and just a couple of years later there may be drought because there is no rain at all. This is an erratic nature of monsoon, mainly because of the problem of climate change that we are facing here. And Bay of Bengal specifically is more susceptible to this. And in that also, the west coast and the central part of Bay of Bengal, they are much more susceptible to monsoon availability as compared to other part, because this is where most of the rivers, for example, river inflow happens. So this is where most of these patterns have been witnessed as compared to monsoon. The phytoplankton, as I said, they also form a very important part of the marine ecosystem. They are the ones who form the base of the marine food chain. So when they are not available in large quantity, that means it has a direct impact on the fish population as well, because they form the food for many small fish, many large commercial fish, etc., zooplankton, all of them feed on phytoplankton. So if you don't have enough sunlight available, and the result will be that because of this lack of sunlight, there will be less of photosynthesis, which will result into decreasing population of phytoplankton, which results in decreasing fishing output anyways. So that becomes a big problem for the government and the fishermen going forward. This also is problematic because in that area, especially in the coastal areas, the coastal communities, large number of people depend on fishing as a primary source of income. That is their primary livelihood. So any impact, any kind of variation in the catching of fish that they have will have an impact on their livelihood. And this is where the government has to focus on. The government has to also ensure that if there is lack of, let's say, fish catching or lack of output from the Bay of Bengal community, they also have to look into how does it impact our output. A lot of this is exported from India, so it might help or it might hurt our foreign exchange as well. It also might hurt the nutrition of the country, because the people who are dependent on fish or marine products for their nutritional needs, they also might have a problem here. So all of this adds up, and all of these are problems that India might face if this kind of a situation arises. Now globally also, the research has shown similar kind of results. There is a similar research going on for other countries as well that also have similar kind of erratic rainfall patterns. So there is a similar kind of a research going on, for example, on the East African coast, on the South China Sea, to see how variation in the rainfall has an impact on the economic output, especially in terms of the marine resources that we have. The last article that we have today is about India being again put on the American IPR watch list. Now, what exactly is this? America releases an IPR list which has a category called the watch list. Watch list, as per America, is those countries where the IP laws about patent, copyright, etc. are not very strong. As for America, these are those countries that are not able to give enough protection to intellectual property rights, not able to give enough protection to inventions that are made by these companies. And America does not appreciate that. Think of it like this, that if an American company, for example, has made an invention, something new, they have patented it, meaning that it should not be copied. When that product comes to India, a lot of people in India start to copy it. It is the government's responsibility to stop that, but the government does not do enough. As per America, the IPR laws in India that we have are not up to the mark, and that is why they put it in the watch list. IPR is one of the very commonly asked topics by UPSC. As you can see here in 2017, this question was asked, especially about National Intellectual Property Rights Policy. Try and see if you can answer this particular question. Now, this priority watch list again is a group of those countries that do not have a strong enough intellectual property right regime or intellectual property law in India or in their country specifically. In India, for example, if you look in the past, pharmaceutical companies have complained a lot. I'll give you an example of what happens. Let's say there's an American company who has done a lot of research over many years, spent billions of dollars, and finally they have found out or discovered a medicine that can cure cancer. Now, because they have found out this medicine cure, they have spent a lot of money, they deserve the right to earn profit from there, right? So they apply for a patent. Patent means an assurance that yes, no one else will be able to copy. You will be the alone company, you will be the company that will be able to make this medicine. No other company will be able to copy this up. So that gives a protection to the company to sell it at a higher cost to earn more profit. But when this company introduces their medicine in India, many companies start to copy it. And Government of India does not protect that. Government of India, although we have laws about it, but the Government of India does not take action against those copycat companies. That is a problem that they have. This is why India has been put on this watch list, meaning that the companies who are introducing their new products to India should be careful, because America has concerns that the patent framework that we have is weak, our copyright laws are very weak, and even when the case goes to the court, there are in very big or large delays in judicial proceeding, which is a fact. A lot of these patent copyright related cases, when they come to our courts, they take many years in order to be resolved, and that becomes a big problem. Again, India has patent laws. It's not that we don't give patent, but the protection that it requires, we are not very strict on that. Now, India being put on this watch list is not new, by the way. India earlier also was in the watch list. It will impact India negatively. Why? Because it sends a signal to companies around the world that you should not bring your new technology to India. Otherwise, it will be copied. You're telling the world that you have to be very careful about the Indian market. So India might face this problem now in bilateral trade negotiations. India might see lesser business interest in investing in India because of the companies will say that, oh, you will not be able to protect my IP, you will not be able to protect my technology, though I will not bring my new technology to India. So this is something which India should be worried about. India has given a response as expected. India has said that no, that is not true. We do not accept what you have done. This is your own personal list. This is not as per the laws of WTO. They say that that is India, that is, they say that India is abiding by all the WTO laws. So we are not something that is going against anything WTO has said. This is the US list, this is the US convention, and we don't agree with that. That is their idea. So India has said that we are sensitive to all the patent regime when we follow all the law. Now, as I said, this is not the first time that it has happened. India has been put on this 301 list, watch list earlier as well, where India used to not have such a strict law of IP. Realizing this, India in the past few years had made stricter laws about it, but US says that these are not enough, and that is why they have pushed India back on this watch list. That is the problem that we have even today. Now, especially it is concerning for the pharmaceutical sector. It is the medicine sector in India. India is known as the pharmacy of the global south. We produce a lot of medicines at cheap cost. A lot of it which is supplied to Africa, which is supplied to low income countries that can't afford expensive medicines. But medicine companies especially are aware of this, that when they bring their product to India, that is a big challenge which Indian government does not protect them from. India has also been accused of misusing the idea of compulsory licensing. Now, what is compulsory licensing? Let's try and understand this. It is a provision that has been allowed by WTO. Let me tell you what exactly is this. So the idea is, let's say this big company has made a medicine that can cure cancer or AIDS. Let's say AIDS it can cure. It is patented, so no one can copy it. So they are selling at a very high price. Let's say they are selling one medicine or one tablet for 10 lakh rupees. Now in India, all of a sudden, number of AIDS cases are increasing and the government wants to control that. The only way to control that is to make that medicine available to the common man. But the common people can't buy it at 10 lakh rupees. So the government of India can use compulsory licensing provision under which the government of India can allow an Indian company to copy this medicine without any penalty. The company will be allowed to copy this medicine and sell it at a much cheaper price to make it affordable to the people. It can only be done in case of a health emergency. And a part of the profit has to go to the original company who made this medicine. WTO allows this. India has done this for some medicine, but the problem is these companies say that it can only be used for health emergencies. But India misuses this. We don't really wait for a health emergency. We use it for many cases. This has become a controversial aspect. That is, how does India use compulsory licensing? Are we using it too often? That becomes a big problem. Apart from this, not just in pharmaceutical sector, there are also concerns about privacy. Let's say operating system like Windows, etc. They are copied and they are sold in the local market as a copy which is not allowed. You get a much cheaper version. All that has to be stopped because all these are patented products. There are always local computer markets where you go, pirated versions of operating system, pirated version of games, etc. will be sold. All this is against the patent right, something that India has to work towards. The example of compulsory licensing I already gave you. There have been cases in India, for example, Novartis, a very famous pharmaceutical company, they had filed a case in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court, the case was that India had rejected a patent of one of their medicines. Supreme Court sided with the government of India. They said that no, we can't give you patent because you will have a monopoly and we cannot have a monopoly over such an important kind of a medicine. So there have been reasons why the US government feels that India does not abide by IPR regime. They are not wrong in many of the cases, but there is a balance that the government needs to strike between the welfare of the people and upholding these kind of IPR laws. These are the articles that we have for today's discussion. Now, as promised, there is a answered mains practice question on the first article that we discussed, which you remember was about the solid waste management. Kind of question that can be asked is, judiciary's use of continuing mandamus can be a potent tool for environmental governance in India. Critically evaluate with reference to waste management and environmental jurisprudence. So, you can talk about what mandamus is in the introduction part, talk 1 or 2 lines about the Supreme Court's importance here, how mandamus can be used. Then in the main body, you can write about why this topic is in the news, a recent verdict of the court because of which we have been discussing this, what has been the verdict here, what exactly has happened in such a case, what is the Supreme Court's role, how can they force government companies to do their bit. And you can conclude this by underlining the importance of Supreme Court, and apart from that, talking about how other bodies also have to work together. Now, we also gave you certain practice questions yesterday. I hope you were able to answer these. Let me discuss those questions here. First question was about the Deputy Speaker. Consider the following statements regarding Deputy Speaker of the Lok Sabha. First, Constitution of India mandates the election of Deputy Speaker as soon as may be after the House is constituted, implying urgency rather than discretion. That is absolutely correct. There is no time limit given. It just says as soon as possible. In the absence of Deputy Speaker, Article 95 empowers the President to nominate panel of chairperson. No. This panel of chairpersons is nominated by the Speaker, not the President. So, second is wrong. Position of Deputy Speaker has its origin in the Central Legislative Assembly under British rule, with Sacharnan Sinha being the first to hold the post. Yes, that is correct. 1 and 3 are the correct answer. Is the correct answer B. Not a difficult one. I hope all of you got this. Then there was a question about Raj Mannar Committee. First, it was the first state constituted committee to systematically challenge India's existing federal structure. Yes, Tamil Nadu government formed this committee. Usually, when a committee is formed to look into center-state relation, it's formed by the center. This time, it was formed by the Tamil Nadu government. Second, it recommended complete abolition of interstate council. No. It supported interstate council. It suggested repealing Article 356, which allows the imposition of President's rule. Yes, it said 356 against our federal nature. 1 and 3 again are correct. The answer would be B. Second one is wrong. There was one more practice question. According to SIPRI report, trends in world military expenditure 2024, consider the following. Number 1, India was the 4th largest military spender in the world 2024. No, India was the 5th largest, not the 4th largest. China accounted for half of total military spending in Asia and Oceania. Yes, that is correct. Ukraine had the highest military expenditure in terms of percentage of GDP. That is also correct. Germany defense spending decreased. No, Germany has been increasing its defense expenditure with an eye on Russia and what is happening there. So 2 and 3 are correct. B would be the answer here. 1 and 4 here are wrong. Then based on what we discussed today, I have 3 practice questions for you. Try and answer those and try and attempt this quiz. If you want to attempt this quiz, the link is in the description of the video. Click on that, go to our website, attempt the quiz. Tell us in the comment section how much did you score. I have 4 practice questions for you. First one, then the second one. These are all based on what we have discussed today. Then there's a third question about internet service providers. And then there's a 4th question. So try and answer this. It will be helpful for you to revise. This is it for today's session. I hope you learned something new today. Do join us tomorrow at 4 for the next edition. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Jai Hind.